in 2019, the first time capsule buried by Stumpy Sanderson and his gang of mischievous working-class boys, and which was actually an old Watney's Party 7 can, was unearthed. Then in 2023, the second time capsule, which was an old Courage Jackpot Bitter Party can, was discovered. And now, Whistling 5 Anarchic Productions, in conjunction with the 1970s Cigarette Appreciation Club and Puffer Patterson's Benevolent Fund for Aging Thespians, proudly presents Series 2 of Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s stories, and the 22 stories found in that second time capsule. As narrated by Andrew Brammer. Bonjour, bon après-midi, et bonsoir. The story you are about to hear is narrated in the first person, because I, just like Stumpy, witnessed firsthand the momentous events which it describes. So, let's park up the rally chopper, dim the lava lamp, switch off that episode of Catweasel, finish up the plate of Vesta beef curry, crack open a can of Double Diamond, light up a mannequin cigar, and kick back, sit back, and listen in to the anarchic and outrageous japes, scrapes and capers of Stumpy Sanderson and his gang. For this story, we head back to 1977 for Arise, Sir Puffer, O Great Thespian. Little could anyone suspect, apart from Stumpy and me, the stage dynamite which Puffer Patterson, key member of our gang and the greatest stage actor we had ever seen, was to unleash during a special school drama event. Puffer Patterson, that portly little roly-poly fellow with a plump face, who was without any doubt the greatest thespian of his generation. A boy of 1,000 faces and 1,000 voices, he was a working-class phenomenon who, despite his humble and latchkey kid upbringing, was a boy with singular talents, as well as having definite upper-middle-class and upper-class aspirations. And we had borne witness to his phenomenal and meteoric rise to acting royalty, right from back in 1970, when he had been compared to a young Peter Lorre for his performance in the school production of Little Lord Fauntleroy. Other great roles and accomplishments were to follow, the highlights including in 1971, when he was compared to a young Charles Laughton for his performance in the end-of-term play, in 1972, when he was compared to a young Orson Welles for his performance in the end-of-term play, in 1973, when he was compared to a young Sidney Greenstreet for his performance in the school end-of-term play, and then, unforgettably, in 1974, when he came to the attention of Dunstable Repertory Theatre after his starring role as Toad in the school production of Toad of Toad Hall. This had resulted in him subsequently landing a major supporting role in The Plotters of Cabbage Patch Corner at said theatre. His roles, of course, had not simply been limited to acting in school and self-penned productions, for during many of our exploits and escapades, he would get into the appropriate character for whatever antics we were getting up to and into, often delivering stirring speeches and oratory to highlight and garland the occasion. Such roles over the years had included Puffer adopting the persona of a Louisiana gambler, Abraham Lincoln, the US Civil War General Ambrose Burnside, Claude Monet, Salvador Dali, the Duke de Richelieu, Fatty Arbuckle, and Mr. Kipling, amongst many others. Of course, though, Puffer, being a member of our gang, was also tarred with the same anarchic brush as we were, and his stage activities had not been without controversy and uproar. For instance, in 1975, he recited a specially written poem in the school assembly to celebrate the despised Miss Wake's long service, entitled A Walk Amongst the Hemlock. This caused an uproar of mirth from the pupils and an uproar of fury from the teachers. And then in 1976, he delivered a tour de force reading of Émile Zola's Jacques as the centrepiece of the end-of-year assembly, dedicating it to the teaching staff. We had all erupted in laughter. The teachers had erupted in fury. And by 1977, Puffer was reaching new peaks of creative powers. Having already starred as Coriolanus in the school play to rave reviews, he had now taken to carrying a gold-tipped cane, wearing a dark green velvet cape, a flamboyant hat, a colourful selection of cravats, Shakespearean shoes, sporting a monocle, and he smoked his menthol cigarettes using a cigarette holder. And it was also in 1977, the year when, of course, punk rock and its anarchic spirit was filling our young veins, when Puffer surpassed even his previous stage controversies with a performance that was to go down in infamy and which created a scandal to match that of the publication of Lady Chatterley's Lover. So, now to that special school assembly, for which members of the Drama Society from a Hertfordshire public school, along with 2 of their English teachers and their headmistress, had been invited along to our Stalag camp to spend a day in our environment as some sort of artistic exchange. At the assembly, the members of this posh school's Drama Society would be reciting various individual pieces on stage, whilst members of our drama club would also be doing the same. Each school would be going in alternate order, and we had been told that the experience would give us all a broad breadth and insight into some of the cultural activities for both the state and private sector. As Stumpy and I slouched in with the rest of our class and took our places a couple of rows back, we were grinning broadly, for we were the only ones present who knew of the creative explosion that Puffer had planned. For like us, he too had been filled with the anarchic spirit of punk, declaring it the greatest expression of working-class rebellion for disaffected youth since the advent of skiffle. As we were taking our seats, we overheard Mr. Butler, our head of year, who was sitting in the row in front of us, in low but animated conversation with Mr. Sudbury and Miss Webster, the English teachers responsible for organising the event. We managed to pick up the gist that Butler, who was doing most of the talking, was far from convinced as to the wisdom of this whole enterprise, and thought it was going to be a disaster, and that the rabble of our school would simply be humiliated against the cultivated ethos of the public school pupils. But then we heard Mr. Sudbury say, "Don't worry, Mr. Butler. It will be fine. We've got Patterson. He's our best and most talented thespian. While we have Patterson, we will always be able to stand tall." I won't go through the full programme here, but Bats Malone, who goodness knows how had been let into our drama club, kicked things off by reciting a dreadful rendition of Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll, read in the style of Humphrey Bogart from the film Casablanca, halfway through which Butler was visibly shaking his head in disbelief. Then, a snooty girl from the private school, who was about 13 foot tall, took to the stage, reading in the poshest voice we had ever heard excerpts from Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. After this, Gentle Gerald read from E.M. Forster's Morris, in a voice that was so soft and mumbled that someone from the back shouted out, "Turn it up, Gerald!" At which point, a couple of teachers rapidly moved in and swooped the caller up and out of the hall. By now, Butler had his head in his hands, particularly when a sturdy rugby-playing hulk from the private school recited a stirring and suspenseful passage from Melville's Moby Dick in a voice that projected and boomed round the hall. The crescendos, diminuendos, and phrasing of the delivery holding the entire hall entranced. We were being slaughtered. Then, as the readings progressed, with our schools getting progressively worse, and with Butler by now either just sitting there stone-faced or reverting to head in hands, Stumpy and I saw members of the private school nudging each other and giggling at our performers. And even though we had thought our lot had been funny at first, we were taking exception to them being ridiculed. Stumpy nudged me. "Wait till they hear what Puffer's got planned." And then, after 6 speakers from each school had spoken, it was time. To a huge roar of applause and cheers from our school, and walking with a gold-tipped cane and with a gait like Thomas Mann's von Aschenbach, Puffer took to the stage, wearing a romantic poet's ruffed shirt as white as pure snow, and his dark green velvet cape, on which was pinned a deep crimson rose. Taking an elaborate bow, from his top shirt pocket he took out a small gold pince-nez, paused, and then addressed the audience in a voice whose resonance and tone filled the hall with the lyrical splendour that only a truly great thespian can deliver. An Ode to a Grecian Urn by John Keats. Puffer's performance was astonishing and electric. Every phrase, every metre, every syllable delivered to perfection in a voice and manner that held the audience transfixed. And when he delivered the final line, the crowd, even those of us who had no knowledge or understanding of the meaning of what had just been delivered, roared our approval. The public school had not expected this at all, and now even their entourage were joining in the tumultuous applause, for they knew greatness when they heard it. Puffer took his bows and plaudits, soaking up the applause, dining on the occasion. And then, reaching once again into his velvet cape, he produced a folded piece of paper and proceeded to unfold it. I nudged Stumpy. "This is it! He's going to do it! He's going through with it!" Puffer addressed us. "I am now going to deliver something that is not on the programme, something that I believe reflects the rebellious spirit of our times." Butler was now sitting bolt upright, and we heard him hiss to Mr. Sudbury, "What's going on here?" "Let him finish. This is genius at work," said Mr. Sudbury. And then, before our very eyes, Puffer's very being seemed to change and metamorphosize. Those of us who witnessed the occasion still swear to this very day that Puffer, like the great Lon Chaney, was transfigured and transformed before our very eyes into a completely different character. He was no longer a boy of short and roly-poly stature, but instead someone whose face, features and figure seemed visibly to be changing, growing and elongating before our very eyes. Then from the piece of paper he held in his hand, Puffer proceeded to recite the specially written piece of bawdy modern punk poetry that Stumpy had composed and given to him, a piece entitled The Lewd Lady of Bude, which he delivered in the voice, style and spirit of Blakey from On the Buses. As the audience listened, some spellbound, some horrified, but all astonished, at the short poem's conclusion, all our lot roared with laughter. Others giggled. The more sensitive of our school were stunned, while the public school entourage simply sat open-mouthed in shell-shocked silence, not believing what they had just heard and seen. As Puffer left the stage, departing like an anarchic Antigonus, his cane in his left hand, and holding his right hand aloft and rotating in triumphant gesture, Butler, visibly seething, quickly and animatedly beckoned to 2 of his hard-men henchmen, who had by now joined him. "This outrage isn't just Patterson's doing, as well as him. Round up the usual suspects." Thank you for listening to this episode of Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories. And please don't forget to check out the other stories from Series 2 and Series 1. You can also follow Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories on Facebook, where you can keep up to date with all the news about live shows and other Stumpy events. There's also the website, www.stumpysanderson.co.uk, and the Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories YouTube channel. And you can get in touch with me at andrew@stumpysanderson.co.uk. Until the next story, au revoir et bonne nuit, and keep grooving.
Yeah. This podcast has been recorded using a DIY punk rock philosophy. Yeah.